And joining us now is Sam Alzheimer of Vianney Vocations Group. Sam, thanks for being with us.
Great to be here.
Hey, Sam.
See, there it is. There's the accent that I was talking about. You know, and you knew Rachel. That is so funny to me.
Yes.
You and Rachel are friends. She's great.
In fact, our families lived next door to each other for a time. But we knew each other in high school. We were in some of the same high school plays together.
Really?
There's a deeper story, maybe for off air, about that. But she's a good friend and does great work in the church.
And a good friend to us, too. So any friend of Rachel's is a friend of ours. So we're so glad you could be with us. And the National Conference for Diocesan Vocation Directors is underway in Boston. What is that like? What's going on?
Well, I tell people, if you want to renew your hope for the church, come to the NCDVD convention. There's 250 priests who have been handpicked by their bishops to go forth and call forth more men to the priesthood. And so you've got a lot of manly men, a lot of prayerful men, a lot of on-fire, zealous priests. So you get them together in a room, and it's exciting.
It's great being with all of you guys, and the women too, at the last Mass and at the Renaissance Hotel last evening. I know you're kind of concluding today and you're all going home. But I got to ask you personally, because a little birdie told me that you were once in the seminary. How did you get involved then in vocations work?
Yeah, well, I was very active in the church in my late teens and early 20s and felt a call to the priesthood. I applied to seminary too late, though. This is a common phenomenon. And so I became the assistant to the vocation director for a year before I went off to seminary, Father Brett Brannon, and he and I put together kind of a vocations plan for the Diocese of Savannah. And we went from just a handful of men to about 30 men in 3 years.
Good plan.
So kind of my heart was already in the vocations ministry to begin with. Even though I later discerned out of seminary, I came back to promoting the priesthood and the need for promoting the priesthood in the church.
Tell us about some of the work at the Vianney Vocations, because I'm sure there's a lot of things that go on that we at home or our viewers right now would have no idea about.
Well, viewers probably know there's a vocation office in every diocese in America, and Vianney Vocations helps to support the vocation director and the work that he does. Now, as you know, because there's a shortage of priests, many vocation directors have other jobs too, right? So we come in and we help them with the communications. We help guys get to a discernment retreat, for example, or we run the social media for the vocation office. So we really provide a lot of support services for vocation offices.
I was in at my parish last night. I was in a classroom with a bunch of 8th graders, about 18, 20 8th graders, just chatting with them, and I ended up, I don't know how I got on it, but I ended up telling them what it, from my perspective, what it feels like as a priest to stand at the altar at the moment of consecration and to realize that I'm holding Jesus Christ himself in my hands. I said, my hands tremble sometimes, and I looked around at them and they were all looking at me wide-eyed. How important is it for us, who are not vocation directors per se, to be telling the story of our relationship to the Lord and our priesthood?
Oh yeah, I mean, good priests beget new priests. So one of the first jobs of every vocation director, in fact, is to encourage his brother priests to be inviters, to speak to a young man, not just from the pulpit, hey, young men, consider the priesthood, but to come up to a specific young man and in a non-jokey way say, you know, John, I admire qualities in you. I think you could be called to the priesthood. Would you pray about it? And get that guy into spiritual direction. Not just say it, but move into a relationship with the young man so that he can find the Lord in his life. And if he's called, great. If he's not, maybe he'll be a good Catholic father.
No harm done.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is that word discernment that we were talking about a little bit earlier. What are some of the challenges that vocation directors face today?
Well, time is a big one. Time, vocation directors. And also, you know, the vocation director's job is to bring, what I say, a pro-vocations message to many different aspects of diocesan life. So, for example, youth ministry, right? The obvious place we need a strong vocations message. Campus ministry, families. He needs to be able to speak to families about teaching their young people to admire the priesthood, to dress up like a nun sometimes, play some dress up. So that's a challenge, is the vocation director integrates his ministry into other aspects of the life of the church.
Mm-hmm. Now, in November every year, we celebrate National Vocation Awareness Week. And it's a time to really focus in on what we've been talking about here on the show today. What are some of the ways that nationally and locally we celebrate Vocations Week and really focus?
The first thing I would say, if there are any priests in your viewing audience, preach about vocations on November 6th. That is the kickoff to Vocations Awareness Week. Secondly, I would say in Catholic schools, religious education, faith formation classes, there needs to be a very overt and explicit vocations message. Teach kids, even kindergartners, who the priest is, why they should admire him. He brings us the Eucharist. We should be teaching our kids the value of these vocations. And also, let's not forget the parents. When the priest is preaching about vocations, perhaps, he needs to speak directly to parents' fears for their child. I want him to be happy. I don't want to lose my son. We need to talk about these things explicitly and say, no. The mothers of priests are happy about it. The dads of priests are happy about it. And actually, very often, a priest's son is more available to you than your married sons. So
Good point.
we need to really talk about these themes during Vocation Awareness Week in an explicit way.
And I've seen that so often, Sam, with my friends who are priests, including the bishop who's right next to me, how close they have been with their mothers, which is always a wonderful thing to see. Well, Sam, thanks so much for being with us today. Thanks for visiting us in Boston. And we're going to have to talk about Rachel after the program so you can tell us some of those stories.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Is
It's
there
G-rated.
Is there a website for Vianney Vocations?
Yes, VianneyVocations.com. The other part of our
easy.
work is lots of vocation resources for parishes and schools.
Great.
Very good.
So.